In 1843, Karl pointedly pointed out that modern religion is a tool for suppressing colonies. In books published by Western churches, the role of missionaries in colonial aggression is blunt. A missionary is worth a battalion of troops. Instead of setting up 9 military strongholds, it would be more effective to set up 9 churches. If your civilization makes me grovel, then I will show you the pride of barbarism. Sedik Bale. The prototype of Sedik Bale is actually the Washa incident after the signing of the Treaty of Shimonoseki. If there is such a question. From 1840 to 1949, how many unequal treaties did China sign? It is estimated that 99% of Chinese people may not be able to answer it. Many people may shrug their shoulders and say, there are probably dozens of them. Wrong, dead wrong. From May 1841 to February 1912, during the 70 years, the Qing government signed a total of 411 unequal treaties to humiliate the country. From March 1912 to May 192, during the 15 years, the Beiyang military government signed a total of 243 unequal treaties. During the 22 years from September 1927 to June 1949, the Kuomintang government signed a total of 91 unequal treaties. 411 plus 243 plus 91 equals 745. So, the answer is 745. Although he knew some of the information about a certain netizen's postgraduate entrance examination before, he still found it shocking. Modern history is an eternal pain in the hearts of the Chinese people. It is a scar that they are unwilling to uncover, let alone a kind of heartache. Everyone likes beautiful things, likes the beautiful side, and always subconsciously avoids or even escapes when encountering pain. However, there is no way, this period of history has already happened, and it will not cease to exist just because we don't see it or don't want to. Now is the rising period of national power and the period of reaching the top. At this time, we must unite as one, and we must face up to that period of history and know what despicable methods the bandits used in the past. Only in this way can we know ourselves and the enemy and win every battle, so that we can learn from history and not repeat the same mistakes. Before the big powers were ready to take action, a large number of Jesuit missionaries were sent into China. They wore religious cloaks, but they did countless shady activities. They are the vanguard and pawns of the invasion of China. It is a scout to spy on intelligence, a spy to deceive people, and a smiling tiger wearing a mask. According to HEXIAN's research data, the Society of Jesus is a mysterious religious organization. During the rise of modern Europe, the Financial Cock Society was actually set up within the Holy See, a special intelligence organization involving military, political, and academic fields that directly served the Pope and the Habsburg kingship. After the Khazar Khanate was destroyed by Kievan Rus, Khazar Judas wandered in Europe and was forced to convert to Jesus. Later, he infiltrated all aspects of the church, developed multiple schools, such as Lutheranism, Illuminati, and captured the internal power. In modern times, the Luo family, the descendants of the Khazar royal family, used World War I to amass wealth and successfully rose, and frantically absorbed China's wealth through various means such as opium, trade, stock market crashes, and mines, and finally became the big head of the Rooster Club, a higher level the chief representative of the Presbyterian Church of Zion, the speaker of world finance and order. The so-called great powers and the so-called Jesuits are nothing but tools in the hands of financial plutocrats. This point must have a clear understanding. If you take a closer look, it's amazing how many leaders in the West don't have children. Is this an accidental phenomenon? Of course not. HEXIAN's research found that the ray of the sun depicted in the emblem of the Jesuits is very strange, with straight lines and curved lines intertwined to represent the light. It is said that the curved line symbolizes the yin line, and the straight line symbolizes the masculine line. The IHS acronym in the figure has two interpretations, which are compatible. First, the explanation of Catholicism. IHS is the abbreviation of Jesus, the Savior of mankind, and it is the three letters Isis Hagiator Soter before the holy name of Jesus in Greek. Second, the explanation of the Rooster Society. IHS is the abbreviation of the slogan in Hoc Cinco, Vinces from the Knights Templar. The literal translation of the sentence is, take this as a record, cheers, wine. Free translation, that is, you will win. The cross on the letter H is also the sword of the knight, which symbolizes the military attribute of the Jesus Order as the direct army of Jesus, company. The three horseshoe nails under the letter H are said to represent the Jesuits as a symbol of the alliance of the three knights of the Crusades. Among the Crusaders in the Eastern expedition, there was a Knights Templar. The military slogan of the Knights Templar is precisely, in hoc cinco, vinces. This sentence is Latin, which means, take this as a memory, toast. The Knights Templar took up the slogan and used the symbol to represent Jesus JD. Two crossed swords form a cross, and the cross is inserted into the crown. The meaning cannot be more obvious. Everyone is familiar with Microsoft Windows. There is a symbol XP on it, which is licensed by the Rooster Club. This XP symbol is derived from a military flag, the labarum. The XP symbol consists of the two Greek initials of JD, Chi Rho Iota Sigma Tau Omicron Sigma or Chi Rho Iota Sigma Tau, Chi and Rho, said to have been first used by the Roman Emperor Constantine I. The origin of the word labarum is unknown. One is that it comes from the Latin labri, which means shaking, swaying, which means the flag is flying. The other is that it comes from the Celtic lafar, meaning eloquent or rich, for performance, or Latin laurium vexillum, that is, laurel/laurel wreath army flag. A photo of an event organized by the Freemasonry. Please pay attention to the IHS Jesuit logo in the upper right corner. There is also a logo on the podium, AP and two crosses. No matter how mysterious you are, your real history is only 300 or 400 years old. As the saying goes, no prophet can't get early. You come to China from thousands of miles. It is impossible to be a good person who is only superficial, and there is no huge profit temptation. How can it be possible? Therefore, if you can imagine it with your toes, you must be a bad person. In the 16th century, the Jesuits that entered China appeared to be a Western religious organization with a mysterious background, but in fact they were directly related to the Rooster Society hidden behind the scenes and the Knights Templar of the Crusaders. The missionary organization of JD Protestantism, also known as Jesus Church, is commonly called Mission Society. In modern times, the more influential Jesuit, Protestant, sects in China include Lutheran Church, Presbyterian Church, Anglican Church, London Missionary Church, Congregational Church, Baptist Church, Methodist Church, Board of Supervisors, Inland Mission, etc. At the beginning of the 17th century, Protestantism tried to spread to China. In 1624, after the Dutch colonists' armed forces invaded Taiwan, they immediately sent missionaries to Taiwan to carry out activities. After more than 20 years of missionary work, the number of believers has grown to more than 1,000. In 1662, Zheng Chenggong recovered Taiwan, and Protestant activities in Taiwan ceased. In 1807, the 12th year of Jiaqing, the British Protestant Church in London sent its first missionary, Robert Morrison, to mainland China. Morrison arrived in Macau and Guangzhou successively in 1807, compiled an English-Chinese dictionary, hired a group of scholars and Chinese laborers, and translated the Jesus Scripture into Chinese. At the same time, he secretly served the East India Company and collected intelligence about China. In the decades before the Opium War, the Hazar Judah Bahrain family supported Jardine Matheson, Wu Bingjian, and the Luo family behind the scenes to support the Sassoon family in front of the stage, frantically exporting and selling opium to China. The Hazarian Judas of the City of London are making a lot of money. In 1767, the British financial Chabal exported 200 chests of opium to China. In 1837, the opium exported to China by the British financial plutocrat soared to 39,000 boxes. In the 40 years before and after the Opium War, these financial Chabals smuggled more than 427,000 chests of opium to China. This alone robbed 300 to 400 million silver dollars from China. At the same time, businessmen from Tsarist Russia and the United States, dozens of the families of the great commanders were more or less involved, were also jealous of this lucrative business, and tried to traffic opium from Central Asia to China to obtain high profits. Then, in the face of the opium trade, what attitude did the missionaries come to China, and what role did they play in it? Western scholar Morrison clearly pointed out in his book History of Maritime Shipping in Massachusetts. Regarding the opium trade that was poisoned to the people by the British and American governments and businessmen, the Christian missionaries in China at that time were not opposed to this kind of trade. Donations accepted. They all say that opium is as harmless to the Chinese as alcohol is to the Americans. According to research, well-known missionaries such as the British missionary Robert Morrison, the American missionaries Burke, Bridgman, and S. Wells Williams all took opium trafficking ships for free and accepted the plutocrats behind the scenes. Sponsored to come to China. 5 Jesuits, including the French missionary Adrien Lanquilot, S.J., came to China on a French warship. British missionary. Founded in 1795, the British J.D. Church in London is a missionary organization organized by several denominations in the UK. Among them, the Congregational Church and the Presbyterian Church were the most powerful and were the first to send missionaries to China. In the 6th year of Xianfen in Qing Dynasty, 1856, 4 centers were built in Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Xiamen, and Shanghai. At that time, the most missionaries came to Shanghai, among them were Ios, Williamson, Meadows, Mulville and others. In October of the 23rd year of Dao Guang, December 1843, Meadows and Dr. Luo Wulan arrived in Shanghai from Batavia, now Jakarta, Indonesia, and rented a house in Shanghai County for foreigners living in Shanghai at that time. It is the earliest Christian chapel in Shanghai to worship, and to practice medicine and preach to China. In the 25th year of Dao Guang's reign, he moved from the city to the concession, where he practiced medicine and preached. In the 23rd year of Dao Guang, Meadows moved the printing organization in Batavia to Shanghai, and opened the Mohe Library, which was the first in Shanghai to print books and periodicals with lead type. In the 10th year of Xianfen, the Maihua Library founded by the American Presbyterian Church moved from Ningbo to Shanghai. It was the printing factory with the latest and most complete equipment in Shanghai at that time. Mohe Library closed down after Maihua Library moved to Shanghai, and all publishing business was undertaken by Maihua Library. As far as the intellectual class is concerned, the Church's cultural influence on China is undoubtedly enormous. The Church implements the cultural hegemony of the West by preaching the word by publishing books, establishing newspapers, and setting up church schools. Timothy Lee declared, "As long as we control the major newspapers and major magazines published in China, we will control the head and back of this country." Publishing institutions established by the Church in China, the famous Mohe Library founded by Meadows in Shanghai in 1843, Library, the Guanghui Society founded by the English Presbyterian missionary Williamson in 1887, and the Puzzle Book Club founded by Martin and others in 1877. From 1843 to 1860, missionaries published a total of 434 kinds of Western books in 6 cities including Hong Kong, Guangzhou, Fuzhou, Xiamen, Ningbo, and Shanghai, including 329 purely religious books, accounting for 75.8% of the total, and 105 other Western books. Species, accounting for 24.2%. Since then, more and more Western books have been published by church publishing institutions. From 1887 to 1900, the Guanghui Society alone published 176 books on religion and Western studies. By 1890, there were 98 kinds of Western learning textbooks for various schools published and approved by Puzzle Book Club. The Jesuits strive to cultivate a group of people who have been educated in Christian teachings and natural sciences, so that they can surpass the old Chinese scholar-bureaucrat class. By 1875, there were about 800 church schools nationwide, with about 20,000 students, more than 93% of which were primary schools, and very few middle schools. In 1900, the total number of church schools in the country increased to 2,000, with about 40,000 students, and middle schools accounted for about 10%. Catholic schools have always focused on primary education. The purpose of almost all the curriculum and textbooks in the school is to strengthen students' Christian beliefs, and little or no effort has been made to introduce Western non-religious knowledge. The above-mentioned missionary of the London Mission, Robert Morrison, came into contact with the notorious British East India Company in the 2nd year of his arrival in China. From 1809 to 1834, the company was abolished monopoly. So far, he has been employed by the company as a secretary and translator. Didn't you come to preach? How did you do this kind of work? In November 1825, Morrison wrote to the board of directors of the East India Company in London to claim credit. During the 15 long years I have been in China, at the request of your staff there, I have often risked my own life and pain to serve the interests of your company faithfully, as the entire company and local businessmen in Guangzhou can attest. The British East India Company recognized his contribution, and his annual salary soon rose from £500 to £1,000. Morrison saw that this job was very expensive. The fat water does not flow into the fields of outsiders, so he quickly called his son. So, through some operations, Morrison's eldest son, John Robert Morrison, 1814 to 1843, who was also a missionary, became the official translator of the British government together with another missionary, Guo Shila. Maruhan, also known as Little Marison or Yang Marison, was born in Macau. He was raised by his father Morrison according to the standard of Chinese scholars since he was a child. At the age of 16, he began to translate documents between British businessmen and Guangzhou officials. He has rich experience, is the chief translation officer of Elliott Trust. His Chinese knowledge system is largely derived from Morrison. In 1834, after Morrison's death, his son took over his father's job as the Chinese secretary and translator of the British Commercial Supervision Office in China. Lin Zexu regarded him as the worst person because of his immoral behavior. He was enthusiastic about missionary work and used his breastfeeding strength to participate in the British invasion of China. In July 1840, the 20th year of Daoguang, Maruhan and Elliott arrived in Daguekao, Tianjin on a British ship, and negotiated with Qi Shan. During the First Opium War, when the British Army attacked China, he advised Pu Dingxia from beginning to end, fully exposing his ambition and ugly face. Guo Shila, Slav, Carl Friedrich August, 1803-1851, was considered a dangerous person by Lin Zexu. Guo Shila, also known as Guo Shili, a German, was born in Pomerania. He used to be a Lutheran priest in Germany, and later became a missionary sent to China by the London Mission. This person is proficient in multiple languages, including various Chinese dialects, has a high IQ, but has extremely poor morals and has no bottom line in dealing with others. In 1831, Guo Shila sailed to Macau to act as an interpreter for the British East India Company. However, this translator is just a name, and his real purpose is to collect various intelligence about China. He has sailed 7 times to China's coastal ports, sold opium in Shanghai and other places, operated on the Amasta spy ship, and distributed religious books and periodicals at the same time. In February 1832, Guo Shila, Hu Xiaomai and a group of 78 people boarded the British East India Company's Amosite and set out from Macau in the name of investigating China's coastal commercial trade, passing through Nanao Island, Xiamen, Fuzhou, Ningbo, Shanghai, Weihai and other places, turned back to North Korea, Ryukyu, and then returned to Macau. While mastering the actual situation in various places, they measured the river courses and bends along the way, drew nautical maps, etc., and provided the British Army with first-hand reliable information. Using his status as a missionary, he entered the ports along the way to find out the truth, and even went to the homes of some Manchu officials to preach and teach. With the guidance of some local officials, Guo Shila successfully sneaked into the barracks for a visit to secretly observe the strength of the Qing army. Guo Shila not only acted as a translator for opium dealers, but also directly participated in the promotion and sale of opium. He has been in and out of the coast of China many times, participating in large-scale opium smuggling activities, and spying on intelligence at the same time. When he returned to Macau in 1832, many opium merchants scrambled to ask him to lead the way to the coast of China to sell opium, and the treatment was very generous. In the 1833 archives of the British Opium Company, there are 2 letters from the company boss praising Guo Shila, now in the library of Cambridge University, which mention Dr. Guo Shila, a missionary who has a doctorate title, true and false depends on his mouth, has helped me a lot. Now that the business is developing, his help is more needed. His enthusiasm is boundless. But it's bold, too daring. The letter described Guo Shila's face of inspection by Chinese officials. Guo Shila put on the most exquisite clothes, led 2 small boats, pretended to be full of air, went forward, threatened the Chinese officials loudly, ordered them to leave quickly, and destroyed them if they dared to come again. In 1835, he served as the Chinese secretary of the British Commercial Supervision in China. From 1831 to 1838, Guo Shila scouted China's coast 10 times and collected a large amount of political, economic, and military intelligence, which became the capital for his participation in the Opium War and the drafting of the Treaty of Nanjing. Before the Opium War, Guo Shila also advised Elliott, the then British consul in Guangdong, on the sales of opium. Guo Shila wrote 3 voyages along the coast of China, covering from the coast of Guangdong to the Shandong Peninsula and the Liaodong Peninsula, declaring that nothing can arouse their respect for us more than our well-placed cannons. its silent language more useful to us than the best debates of demos thence. During the Second Opium War, Guo Xile and Maruhan provided intelligence and advice for the British Army, and became important consultants for the invasion of China. When the British Army entered the Yangtze River, Maruhan was on the warship of Sir Henry Pottinger, October 3, 1789 to March 18, 1856, the first governor of Hong Kong. Pottinger, the first governor of Hong Kong. When Pu Dingcha encountered strong resistance in Zhenjiang, he felt timid and planned to retreat. Maruhan urged Pu Dingcha to continue to attack and hit Nanjing. Under the instigation of Maruhan, Pu Dingcha really went to Nanjing, and the Qing court was forced to surrender. During the Opium War, Guo Xile put on a military uniform and went with the army to collect food and military supplies. In June 1842, the British Army attacked Shanghai. Guo Xile, who knew Shanghai well for a long time, acted as the guide of the commander of the British Navy and assisted in commanding operations. In July 1842, when the British Army attacked Zhenjiang, Guo Xile took advantage of his familiarity with the terrain to lead the way. After rushing into the city, he burned, killed and looted along the streets. Guo Xile successively served as the magistrate of Dinghai County in 1840, the magistrate of Ningbo County in 1841, and the chief executive of Zhenjiang in 1842. On September 5, 1839, Guo Xile directly participated in provoking the Battle of Kowloon. After the outbreak of the Opium War, he actively participated in the whole process as a translator. When the British Army attacked Dinghai, he used his previous experience in coastal waters and port cities to join a reconnaissance expedition to collect information on the deployment of the Qing army and military facilities. He joined the first batch of landing troops, brought the Enmin notice with him, was appointed as the magistrate of Dinghai, and issued orders to the Chinese people. He continued to follow the British Army and worked as a civil affairs officer in Ningbo and other places occupied by the British Army. In 1842, he participated in the final negotiations and several negotiation meetings of the Treaty of Nanking. The British plenipotentiary representative of the Treaty of Nanjing was Pu Dingcha, the British commander who led the ship to attack the Yangtze River and fight to Nanjing. During the negotiation process, his four right-hand men, Guo Xile, Maruhan, Li Taiguo, George Tradt-Saint-Lay, 1800 to 1845, of the Anglican Church, and Walter Henry Medhurst Jr. of the London Society were all missionary. George Tradt-Saint-Lay, he was originally a missionary in China. He is a well-known China hand. He was the first British consul in Guangzhou. Later, he successively served as consul in Fuzhou and Xiamen. His wife, Mary Nelson, is the niece of the British naval hero Horatio Nelson. Li Taiguo and Mary Nelson have a biological son named Li Taitai, whose English name is Horatio Nelson Lay, and adopted a Chinese child, Lu Wenjing, named Li Buo. Influenced by his family, Li Taitai was able to speak authentic Chinese at a very young age, so he easily entered the British diplomatic circle in China in the future, and was appointed as the General Taxation Department of China Customs in 1861, similar to the modern General Administration of Customs. Became a heavyweight in modern Chinese history. In his attempt to establish a navy for China, Li Taitai seized power without authorization and used Chinese money to create a Sino-British joint fleet that was not controlled by China. Li Taiguo's biological son made a mess when he first got involved in naval affairs, but his adopted son Lu Wenjing really became a famous naval captain. The adopted son Lu Wenjing was later convicted for his performance in the Mijiang. Guo Xile and Maruhan were not only the main representatives in the negotiation of the Nanjing Treaty, but also arranged the drafting of the treaty, and bargained with the Chinese representatives on the specific content of the treaty many times. They tried their best to blackmail the Chinese representative and obtained more privileges and compensation than originally planned. After the war, Guo Xile served as the secretary of the Hong Kong Governor of Commerce in China for another 8 years until he died of illness in Hong Kong in 1851. With the great assistance of the missionaries, on July 22, 1843, the British forced the Qing government to revise the Five-Port Trade Charter and announced it in Hong Kong. In 1890 and 1893, the Qing government and Britain successively signed the Tibet-India Treaty and Tibet-India Treaty Renewal. As the London missionary Tom Griffith 1831-1912, wrote in a letter to the British mission, "This country is in fact already in our hands, and all the missionaries already in China and missions in their respective countries, If they don't take this land and get a permanent foothold in every center of the 18 provinces, that would be sinful. American missionary. Seeing that Britain has seized huge benefits in the East, the United States, which has just been founded, is also ready to move. As for the routine, it is naturally the same as in Europe. The first American Protestant missionary to China was Elijah Coleman Bridgman, 1801 to 1861, sent by the American Ministry, later renamed the Congregational Church. In 1826, Bridgman entered Andorra Theological Seminary, which was famous for sending missionaries abroad. After graduating in September 1829, he was approved to become the first missionary sent to China by the American Ministry, American Foreign Mission Society. On October 14th of the same year, he set off for China. In 1830, arrived in Guangzhou. In 1832, he co-founded the English monthly China series with the British missionary Morrison, introducing knowledge about China, and served as the editor-in-chief until 1847. Piz Hai Wen was one of the early translators of the Chinese version of the Bible. American missionary Bridgman admitted that they came to China not so much for religious reasons, but for political reasons. In 1834, Bridgman and the British missionary Guo Shila, also known as Guo Shili, and others jointly established the China Puzzle Association. In 1836, he participated in the founding of the Morrison Educational Association. In 1838, the Chinese Medical Association was established and served as the vice president. In 1840, American missionary Luo Xiaoquan was the first to come to Hong Kong. In 1842, the American missionaries Gabriel and Wen William came to Xiamen for the first time. In 1843, the British missionary Matthews was the first to arrive in Shanghai. In 1844, there were 31 Protestant missionaries in China, and only 6 believers. In 1844, he served as the pastor of the American Mission and the translator and secretary of the American minister Gu Shen, and assisted in the conclusion of the Sino-Us Treaty of Guangxia. In 1850, Bridgman cooperated with others to complete the translation of the New Testament Literary Bible, and in 1851 completed the translation of the Old Testament Literary Bible. In 1857, he assisted in the establishment of the North China branch of the Royal Asiatic Society in Shanghai and acted as its own president. In September 1861, Bridgman suffered from dysentery and died in Shanghai in November. Peter Parker. American missionary Peter Parker was an assistant to the American consul in Guangzhou. He once advocated, "Only war can open China to Christ." Peter Parker was born in Massachusetts in 1804 and graduated from Yale University in 1831. In 1834, he was sent to China by the American Ministry and became the first American Protestant missionary doctor to China. In 1840, as soon as the First Opium War broke out, Bojia hurried back to the United States, advocating to the President, the State Department and Congress that the United States should take this opportunity to participate in the war against China, and advocated sending envoys to China to sign unequal treaties. At that time, the U.S. President, Secretary of State, and Congress all attached great importance to Bojia's return to China. He met the outgoing President and Secretary of State, as well as the incoming new President and Secretary of State. Soon, the United States sent Ganny as the commander of the Navy to lead 2 warships to China to cheer for the British Army. At this time, the American missionary Bridgman just mentioned above served as the translator and assistant of Commander Ganny. In 1855, Bojia was appointed as the first American missionary envoy to China. The signing of the Treaty of Guangzhou between China and the United States was also thanks to the missionaries. With the assistance of missionaries Bojia, Bridgman, and Wei Sanwei, the Chinese government was forced to accept the Sino-Us Guangxia Treaty, which was harsher than the Nanjing Treaty, and obtained the privilege of most favored nation treatment for the United States. The missionaries collected Chinese intelligence, violated China's sovereignty, and acted as the vanguard of the great powers invading China. During the Opium War, some missionaries used the name of missionary mission to collect all kinds of information along the coast of China, advocated the war against China, and participated in military aggression. After the Opium War, they directly participated in various aggression as diplomats. Chinese activities. During the Opium War, when the British invaders came to Shanghai, Louis de Best, the Catholic Bishop of Nanjing, disguised himself as a Chinese many times, and took a sampan boat to the Empress warship at night to meet the British commander Pu Ding Cha, Henry Pottinger, reporting to him the military and political intelligence of the Diocese of Nanking and China. American missionaries David Abiel and William Jones Boone and 2 other missionaries participated in the British invasion of Xiamen. British missionary and Dr. William Lockhart followed the first batch of British troops to Dingai, and missionary Milne's son, William Milne Jr., also arrived in Dingai afterward. British missionary Walter Henry Medhus was sent to Zhoushan to work as an interpreter in the British Army headquarters. In 1887, Tian Bei, the U.S. ambassador to China, wrote to the U.S. State Department in a report stating, "The information gathered by these vanguards, referring to American missionaries, about China's ethnicity, language, geography, history, business, and even general culture, and sending them back to China will be a great contribution to the United States." After the Opium War in 1840, American missionary Guo Ziyan went to Qingdao in 1873 to carry out missionary activities in mountain villages around Lishan and Jimo. In the process of missionary work, relying on the power of colonialism to run rampant in the countryside, constantly creating troubles and causing many teaching cases. In June 1868, Burlingame, the former U.S. minister to China, excitedly declared in a speech in New York City that China was ready to invite missionaries to set up glorious crosses on every hill and in every valley. During the Second Opium War, missionaries also played an important role in the signing of the Treaty of Tianjin in 1858 and the Treaty of Beijing in 1860. In particular, American missionary Wei San feared the use of intimidation and inserted a tolerance clause in the Sino-Tianjin Treaty, granting privileges to foreign missionaries and Chinese believers, enjoying extraterritoriality and being protected by unequal treaties. Taylor Danny said, "The actual negotiations on the Treaty of Tianjin between China and the United States were managed by Dr. Wei Sanwei and Reverend Martin Ting. It is obvious to the public that the American missionaries are pushing the boundaries and trying to force the empire to open up." Honorable T.R. Jeru-Egan, former U.S. consul in Shanghai, said, "If there were no missionaries to provide information, many places on the mainland of China are still closed today. Their products are only sold in a narrow range. It should be remembered that the banner of commerce followed the banner of the cross. Anyone who knocks off the hand holding onto the banner of the cross will harm the interests of business." American missionary Gilbert Reed stole a piece of land in Shandong in 1887 while the owner was still in prison. Without the consent of the magistrate, he personally led a group of people, forced their way into the site on November 28, drove out the original residents, and occupied the place. Later, when the owner's family appealed, Tian Bei, the U.S. ambassador to China, intervened, and finally in 1889 forced the magistrate to give him a piece of land outside Jinan City that was larger than the property seized by Li Jiabai in exchange for compensation. French and German missionaries. French missionaries also made great contributions to the signing of the Sino-French Whampoa Treaty. They forced the Qing government to sign the unequal Sino-French Treaty of Whampoa on October 24, 1844, on a French warship anchored in Whampoa. In addition to obtaining all the privileges stipulated in the Sino-British and Sino-American treaties, France also stipulates in Article 22 that the French can build churches in Wuchao. If a Chinese violates and destroys French chapels and cemeteries, the local officials will severely detain and punish them as usual. As a result, the Qing government was forced to take on the responsibility of protecting the French missionaries in China. Since then, the activities of French missionaries in China have become more rampant and unscrupulous. Most of the teaching plans in modern Chinese history were initiated by French missionaries. French missionaries participated in the negotiations of the Sino-French Beijing Treaty in 1860, acting as translators and document drafters for the French delegation. During the drafting process of the Beijing Treaty, the words "let French missionaries rent and buy fields in various provinces and build as they please" were added to the Chinese text without authorization, and the mandatory "return the old site" was written into the treaty. This sentence allowed foreign missionaries to obtain the privilege of renting and buying land and building houses anywhere in China, and provided the basis for treaties and amulets for foreign missionaries to occupy real estate in mainland China and set up churches everywhere, and became a source of civil and religious disputes in various places. And the serious hidden danger that causes teaching plan. Since the signing of the Treaty of Tianjin and the Treaty of Beijing, a large number of missionaries went deep into the interior of China to occupy land, interfere in internal affairs and shield the Christians. In 1860, after the French missionaries added the return of the old site to the Beijing Treaty, the Catholic Church used this method to seize a large number of public and private land properties in various places by means of forced occupation, stolen buying and selling, low-priced purchases, and donations from the Church. purchase a lot of land and collect lessons for profit, buy land and set up churches, which is very troublesome. The source of funding for the Catholic Church has gradually shifted from relying on foreign countries to directly obtaining land and real estate owned by China, issuing usury loans, and operating other commercial activities. Catholic missionaries carried out extortion in more than a dozen provinces including Jiangsu, Jiangxi, Guangdong, Hubei, Sichuan, Zili, Shandong, Shaanxi, Shaanxi, Henan, and Fengtian, and illegally seized real estate in the name of returning churches. In Zili province alone, missionaries arbitrarily razed 72 so-called old sites and forcibly demanded their return. From 1861 to 1875, the Catholic Church purchased more than 300 acres of land and 36 houses in Xian County, Hebei. From 1877 to 1879, North China was hit by a severe drought that had not happened in a century. The church took the opportunity to purchase 1,258 mu of land at a low price in Xian County, Hejian and other counties. In 1883, in Fengzhen Hall, Inner Mongolia, the church bought 260 hectares of wasteland with only 4,500 taels of silver. In the south of the Yangtze River, the missionaries didn't even mention the location, but only mentioned the names of 15 county capitals, forcing the local authorities to survey the sites and return them. At the end of the 19th century, the church occupied an area of about 2 million mu in the south of the Yangtze River, and the Sheshan area of Songjiang County alone covered an area of more than 6,000 mu. In Jinan, Shandong, missionaries incited believers to violently evict a large number of residents from the old site, and did not give money to all the houses and real estate they seized. In Zhangzhou, Shaanxi, the missionaries could not provide any evidence at all, but forced the return of the former site of Dongyang Academy. The French envoy also went to the Prime Minister's office to blackmail. When the academy is not a Catholic church and various temples, it is comparable to those who should chant scriptures and offer sacrifices. Scholars can study anywhere, so why restrict it here? Under pressure from the local authorities, a school site covering an area of 43 mu was occupied by missionaries. Such cases are all over the capital. After the occurrence of previous teaching cases, a large amount of indemnities were extorted, which made the Catholic Church in China have a strong economic strength. According to a survey conducted by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1902, the real estate value of the Catholic Church in China has reached 37 million francs or $5.4 million US, which does not include many real estate properties. The church also rented and exploited religious people and farmers or lent usury. The land rent rate was as high as 50% to 70% and the usury interest rate was as high as 20% to 30%. The Jesuits in China also collect money by renting out properties, running businesses, and setting up industries. As pointed out in the proclamation issued by missionary Zhu in Dongguan County, Guangdong Province at that time, once you claim to be a Christian, you will often follow the trend, and you will bully the good and the weak in the fish and meat village. All kinds of disadvantages are too numerous to enumerate. The various misdeeds of the followers under its protection caused more than 500 teaching cases, and triggered the Boxer movement that shocked China and foreign countries. The French envoy to China also admitted in 1878 that the Chinese government complained about the missionaries stealing official functions of the Chinese government, or trying to replace its regime. We must acknowledge these facts, and these complaints are often well-founded. After Germany occupied Qingdao, foreign missionaries came to Qingdao one after another. Before Qingdao was liberated, there were 11 missionaries affiliated with missionaries from 13 countries, including Germany, the United States, Britain, France, Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, Russia, Poland, Norway, Australia, Canada, and North Korea, preaching in Qingdao. Missionaries enjoy extraterritorial power in China. They use churches as fortresses and believers as subjects, often becoming special powerful figures who are not subject to the jurisdiction of the Chinese government or restricted by Chinese laws. Some missionaries meddled in Chinese officialdom, interfered in China's internal affairs, and lavishly took on lawsuits, and even priests, parishioners, and local officials sat in public cases side by side. The missionaries often used gunboats as their backing, and used protecting the teaching as an excuse to blackmail the Qing court and local officials at will. Some bishops as the religious rulers of the whole province adopted the official rank and travel ceremonies of the governors to express the symbols of the legal power monopolized by the gentry officials, and they became the government within the government. After joining the church, some ruffians also relied on the power of the church to run rampant in the countryside and commit all kinds of evil. All kinds of strange appearances never appeared in all dynasties before the Qing dynasty. Why did they fall to this point? Robert K. G. Temple, a professor at the University of Kentucky in the United States, wrote China, a nation of invention. As the undisputed masters of invention and discovery for 3,000 years, the Chinese were the first to discover the solar wind, blood circulation, and sex hormones. The contributions of ancient China in the fields of engineering, medicine, technology, mathematics, science, transportation, military affairs, and music, in the 18th century sparked the agricultural and industrial revolutions in Europe. An ancient and great civilization fell to the bottom in the Qing dynasty. It stayed in the destructive spiritual and physical cage cast by the Qing dynasty for 267 years, and almost became a slave completely. This is the real Qing dynasty, not the appearance of the rich and noble flowers in Qing court dramas. Macartney, who once led a mission to celebrate Emperor Qianlong's birthday, commented on the Qing dynasty. This government, as it currently exists, is strictly speaking an autocratic rule of a handful of Tatars over hundreds of millions of Han Chinese. This despotism has had disastrous effects. Since the Central Plains was conquered by the Manchu Tartars, the whole country has not improved, has not advanced, or rather has reversed. They are practically becoming semi-savages as they advance with the field of science. On the way of tampering with history and dwarfing ancient Chinese civilization, not only the Manchus, but also churches, great powers, and Jesuits under the control of financial plutocrats. Why did the eight-power Allied forces invade Beijing and set fire to the old summer palace? One of the very important reasons is that the Yuan Minjia Yuan, known as the Garden of 10,000 Gardens, contains a large number of ancient books, and these are historical evidences that far surpass Western civilization.